Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And this time, you and I are going to be heading back in time to the late 16th century, to the late 1500s, to try to solve one of America's oldest cold cases,
Okay.
the disappearance of the Roanoke Colony.
Right.
Now, you might have heard of this one. This is one that a lot of people have heard of. But if you haven't heard of it, picture this. Over 100 English colonists vanish without a trace from their settlement on Roanoke Island.
Wow.
Leaving behind a single word.
A single word.
Carved into a tree. CROATANing.
It really is a historical enigma. It captures the imagination. This wasn't just some temporary expedition.
Right.
Roanoke was intended to be a permanent English foothold in the New World.
Yeah.
It was meant to be a stepping stone to colonization. And yet when their governor returned after a 3-year absence, he found a ghost town.
Yeah.
It's as if they simply vanished into thin air into the dense, tangled forests of the island.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? I mean, history's full of lost settlements and vanished expeditions, but something about Roanoke feels different.
I
A bit
agree.
more unsettling.
Right.
Maybe it's the lack of any definitive answers.
Right.
The way the mystery just lingers.
Yeah.
After centuries.
Its mystery made even more intriguing by the context. We need to remember, this was a period of immense change and upheaval.
Yeah.
The dawn of a new era of exploration and colonization.
Yeah.
The settlers at Roanoke were venturing into a completely unknown world,
Yeah.
facing challenges we can hardly even imagine today.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of Roanoke Island in 1587.
Okay.
We've got Sir Walter Raleigh under the authority of Queen Elizabeth I.
Right.
He has dispatched these colonists to establish a permanent settlement.
Yeah.
Around 115 men, women, and children,
Wow.
setting sail with dreams of a new life in a new land.
Hmm.
But from what I've gathered, their initial optimism was very quickly met with the harsh realities of life in this new world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
While the initial interactions with local Native American tribes were seemingly peaceful,
Right.
that fragile peace quickly deteriorated. There are accounts of disputes over resources,
Yeah.
misunderstandings fueled by cultural differences,
Of course.
and a growing sense of mistrust on both sides.
It makes you wonder about those early encounters,
Yeah.
the clash of cultures,
Yeah.
the anxieties and fears that must have been swirling on both sides.
Imagine trying to communicate with people whose language and customs are utterly alien to you,
Right.
whose way of life is so different from your own.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for tension and conflict,
Right.
especially in an environment where survival is constantly at stake.
And survival was definitely a challenge for the Roanoke colonists.
Yes.
They struggled to adapt to the unfamiliar climate and soil, to find reliable sources of food and water.
Yeah.
They were heavily reliant on supply ships from England,
Right.
which meant any delay could spell disaster.
Which brings us to the pivotal figure in this mystery, Governor John White.
Okay.
He sailed back to England in 1587 to request additional supplies,
Right.
leaving behind his daughter, his son-in-law, and his newly born granddaughter, Virginia Dare,
Wow.
the first English child born in the New World. But his return journey was delayed not by a few weeks or months, but by 3 long years due to the escalating conflict between England and Spain,
Oh, wow.
culminating in the Spanish Armada.
Talk about terrible timing.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine the weight of worry that must press down on him knowing that his family and the entire colony
Right.
were struggling to survive without him. And then in 1590, he finally returns to Roanoke.
Yes.
What must have been going through his mind as his ship approached the island?
Anticipation, hope, maybe even a sense of dread. And what he found upon landing would have confirmed his worst fears. The settlement was deserted.
Wow.
No welcoming committee, no signs of life,
Just empty.
just empty houses,
Wow.
and the haunting silence of the wind rustling through the trees.
It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it. He found no bodies, no signs of a struggle or a panicked evacuation, just these carefully dismantled houses.
Yeah.
Like they had time to pack up and leave, but where could they have possibly gone? And then there's that eerie inscription on a tree, CROATOAN, seemingly pointing towards a nearby island. Another tree bore just the letters CRO,
Right.
adding another layer of mystery to the puzzle.
And notably absent was a cross symbol. The prearranged signal the colonists were to leave behind if they had been forced to relocate under duress.
Right.
The absence of that cross deepens the mystery.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the Roanoke colonists?
Yeah.
Seems it wasn't a desperate, violent flight.
Right.
It wasn't a chaotic event.
Yeah. So we're left with this unsettling scene A deserted colony, a cryptic carving, and a governor desperate for answers what happened to the Roanoke colonists. It's a question that has haunted historians and armchair detectives for centuries. Where do we even begin to unravel this mystery?
Well, we have to start with the evidence, scant as it may be. And one of the most compelling pieces of evidence is that word carved on the tree, CROATOAN. It suggests, at least initially, that the colonists might have sought refuge with the Croatan tribe, a Native American group who lived on a nearby island.
That's the theory that always grabbed my attention. The idea that the colonists facing starvation and hardship might have been taken in by a friendly tribe integrating into their society. It's a story of survival adaptation and perhaps even cultural exchange.
And it's a theory that challenges the traditional narrative of colonization, which often focuses solely on conflict and conquest. What if, in some cases, the encounter between Europeans and Native Americans was more complex, more nuanced?
It makes you rethink those early chapters of American history, doesn't it? It's not just a story of one group displacing another, but a more intricate tapestry of interactions, collaborations, and perhaps even merging of cultures.
Precisely. And there's actually quite a bit of evidence that supports this theory of assimilation. Native American oral histories, passed down through generations, speak of newcomers with European features joining their tribes. Some tribes even had members in later years with blue eyes and European customs, potentially descendants of the lost colonists.
It's like a whisper from the past, hinting at a different version of history, a story of survival and adaptation that was never officially recorded.
And then there are the archaeological discoveries. In 2015, researchers working on Hatteras Island, which was formerly known as CROATOAN Island, unearthed a treasure trove of artifacts, English pottery tools, even weapons, all dating back to the time period of the Roanoke Colony.
Okay, so we're talking about tangible objects buried for centuries that directly connect the Roanoke colonists to the Croatan tribe. What kind of pottery do they find anything unique, anything that sheds light on their daily lives?
Well, some of the pottery fragments were quite ordinary cooking pots, storage jars, things you'd expect to find in any settlement.
Huh.
But there were also pieces of more refined tableware, suggesting that at least some of the colonists retained elements of their European lifestyle, even as they integrated into a new culture.
It's fascinating to picture those objects being used to imagine the colonists and the Croatan tribe sharing meals, exchanging stories, perhaps even learning each other's languages. It paints a very different picture from the traditional narrative of conflict and separation.
But of course, the assimilation theory doesn't solve all the mysteries surrounding Roanoke. If the colonists did join the Croatan tribe, why didn't they leave a clearer message for John White? Why was there no attempt to contact England later on?
Those are valid questions. Maybe they were afraid of reprisals, or perhaps they simply adapted to their new life and saw no need to return to England, or maybe there's a completely different explanation, a piece of the puzzle we haven't even considered yet.
That's the thing about history, isn't it? There are always more questions than answers. And just when we think we've pieced together a plausible narrative, a new discovery emerges that challenges our assumptions.
Which brings us to another intriguing development in the Roanoke saga, the possibility that the colonists, or at least some of them, didn't stay on Hatteras Island. There's evidence suggesting they might have moved further inland.
In 2020, researchers uncovered a potential settlement site about 50 miles inland from Roanoke in Bertie County, North Carolina. The site dates back to the right time period and contains European-style structures and artifacts that could be linked to the colonists.
50 miles inland, that's a considerable distance, especially in those days. What would have prompted them to make such a move? Were they searching for better farmland, trying to avoid conflict with other tribes, or was there something else drawing them westward?
It's a tantalizing question.
Yeah.
There are historical accounts mentioning a group of strange people living in that area who claim to be descended from the lost colonists. Could this be the missing link, the final chapter in the Roanoke story?
It's like adding another layer to an already complex puzzle. So now we have potential evidence of the colonists integrating with the Croatan tribe on Hatteras Island, and also evidence of them potentially establishing a settlement further inland. Is it possible they split into two groups, each following a different path?
It's certainly a possibility. Or perhaps they moved as one group first to Hatteras Island and then later inland for reasons we can only speculate about. Maybe they were seeking greater security or better resources, or perhaps they were drawn by rumors of gold or other riches further inland.
It's almost like a historical treasure hunt, following the trail of these long-lost colonists, trying to piece together their movements and motivations from the fragments of evidence they left behind.
And one of the most exciting developments in recent years is the use of DNA analysis to potentially solve this mystery. Once and for all, scientists are currently comparing DNA samples from descendants of both the Croatan tribe and families who claim lineage to the Roanoke colonists.
This is where it gets really interesting. If they find a genetic match, a clear link between these two groups, it would be pretty compelling evidence that the Roanoke colonists didn't simply vanish, but rather integrated into Native American communities, leaving behind descendants who carry their genes and perhaps even fragments of their lost history. It's amazing to think that we're potentially on the verge of a scientific breakthrough that could rewrite history as we know it. But even if the DNA results are inconclusive, the Roanoke mystery, I think, will likely continue to fascinate us for generations to come.
Yeah.
And, part of its enduring appeal, I think, lies in its impact on popular culture.
Absolutely. The story of Roanoke has seeped into our collective consciousness, inspiring countless books, movies, TV shows, even video games.
Oh, yeah.
It's a blank canvas onto which writers and artists have projected their own interpretations, anxieties, and fascinations.
It seems like every generation rediscovers the Roanoke mystery and then reinterprets it through the lens of their own time. I remember as a kid being captivated by those spooky stories about the CROATOAN curse and the colonists vanishing into thin air.
The word itself has become synonymous with unexplained disappearances. It's shorthand for the eerie and the unknown. It's been linked to other historical mysteries like the lost ships of the Franklin expedition in the Arctic or the disappearance of Amelia Earhart over the Pacific.
And those connections, even if purely speculative, they add another layer of intrigue to the Roanoke story. It makes you wonder if there's some deeper meaning, some hidden pattern connecting these seemingly disparate events.
It speaks to our innate desire to find order in chaos, to connect the dots and make sense of the inexplicable. And the Roanoke mystery, with its lack of definitive answers, invites us to fill in the gaps with our own imaginations, to create our own narratives, to weave our own theories.
But beyond the spooky stories and the paranormal speculation, I think there's a deeper cultural significance to the Roanoke mystery. It forces us to confront the complexities of history, to acknowledge the gaps in our knowledge, and to question the narratives we've been told.
For centuries, the Roanoke story was often presented as a cautionary tale about the dangers of the New World, the threat of hostile natives, the fragility of European settlements in the face of wilderness. But as our understanding of history has evolved, so too have our interpretations of Roanoke.
We're starting to see more nuanced depictions that acknowledge the agency of Native Americans, that explore the possibility of cultural exchange and assimilation, that challenge the traditional narrative of European dominance.
And those new interpretations are crucial because they force us to re-examine our own biases, to question the stories we tell ourselves about the past, and to recognize the diversity and complexity of human experience.
So in a sense, the Roanoke mystery isn't just about uncovering what happened to those 115 colonists. It's also about understanding ourselves, about confronting the unknown, and about recognizing the power of stories to shape our perception of the world.
It's a reminder that history is not a static fixed entity, but rather a dynamic, ever-evolving narrative, constantly being reshaped by new discoveries, new perspectives, and new interpretations.
It's like we're all detectives piecing together the fragments of the past, trying to make sense of the evidence and ultimately constructing our own versions of history. And that process of investigation and interpretation is what keeps the Roanoke mystery alive even after more than 4 centuries.
The true legacy of Roanoke may not lie in the answers we find, but in the questions. It continues to raise questions about survival adaptation, cultural exchanges, and the nature of truth, and the enduring power of the human imagination.
It's a reminder that even in an age of information overload, there are still mysteries out there, stories that defy easy explanation enigmas that beckon us to explore, to question, and to imagine.
So the next time you encounter the word CROATOAN, don't just think of a lost colony or a spooky curse. Think of the complex layered story, that it represents a story that continues to unfold even today, a story that invites us to delve into the depths of history and confront the mysteries that still linger in the shadows.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Roanoke mystery. We may never know for sure what happened to those colonists, but the search for answers continues. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one to uncover the next clue, the missing piece of the puzzle that finally unlocks the secrets of Roanoke.